Good afternoon, everybody. We'll give everyone just a few more minutes to jump on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our IT Valuations webinar called MSPs and CPAs, How Your CPA Drives Value for Your Business. My name is Aaron Mall, Executive Vice President here at IT Valuations, and we'd like to extend a warm welcome to those of you joining us online today for the webinar. Have a couple of guests, a familiar face, Greg Northrup, our Director of Tax and Finance at IT Valuations, and also Managing Partner at IT Tax Advisors, as well as Randy Crocket, CFO and partner at SnapTech Technology. Guys, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely. Well, for those of you who may be new to our webinar series, you may not know this, but we'd like to give away a gift card or two every webinar, and it's typically tied to one of our guests and a fact about one of our guests. And so today, since Randy Crocket is our guest from SnapTech, we have a trivia question. And that question is this: in what state did Randy run out of gas while flying an airplane? What state? If you get that right, it's a $25 Amazon gift card. The first person to drop that in the chat with the correct state wins that gift card. We'll reveal the winner at the end of the webinar. Bonus points, meaning that we'll give you another $25 gift card. I think actually it should be more, but tough times financially right now, so can't go more than 25. But if you know the make and model of the plane he was piloting, that's worth another $25. So again, if you know what state Randy ran out of gas in while flying an airplane, that's $25. If you know the airplane he was flying while that happened, another $25. And there is a story behind this. So if you want to hear the story, you got to stick around to the end anyway. So that's
Pretty
the
good
trivia
one.
question, and encourage you guys to just take a guess. There's no harm in guessing. You're not added to some mailing list by guessing. We're not going to spam you forever. Just take a guess, win $25, spend it on Amazon.
Yeah,
There you
there's
go.
really only 50 guesses that they can do, right? So
That's right. Yeah. If you don't know the 50 states, now's a good time to Google that and then just take a guess, right? So absolutely. Everyone has a chance to win, I think. So, hey, if you're going to be out and about over the next month or so, we'd love to see you. We'll be at Evergreen Elevate. Reed Warren, our CEO, will be there in Austin, March 3rd and 4th. That actually, believe it or not, is next week. It's amazing how fast February is flying by. And then we'll be at the ConnectWise Evolve Peer Groups the week of May 5th through 9th, excuse me, in Chicago. In the middle of that week is IT Nation Grow. That's Wednesday. It's an M&A event for guests, and so we'll have representation at that event as well. Would love to spend some time with you, grab a coffee, grab a drink, a meal if you're in town one of those days. Want to save the date for our next webinar in March 20th of 2025. We'll have our next webinar on valuation trends of IT companies for Q1. So Greg is part of his team. They run the valuations department here at IT Valuations, and because we have access to so many clients' data, and we can look at trends over time and begin to extrapolate what we're seeing in the marketplace. And so that'll be just some findings, sanitized findings really from our clients over the last quarter. We'll do it every single quarter throughout the year, and so a great touch point to see kind of what's happening in the trends. The other thing we'll talk about too is what we're seeing from a transaction perspective. We expect to see potentially 4 to 5 deals close this quarter at IT Valuations, and so happy to share some stories around that as well. Q2 webinars, dates are still being finalized, but have several guests. One series we launched last year was called The Transaction Journey. We talked about really what happens from letter of intent through due diligence to finding the right buyer, finding the right seller. What happens post-acquisition? How do you integrate cultures? We're going to have a special guest, the CEO of Optimal Networks in Washington, D.C. will be joining us for that. We'd love to have you join us for that webinar. Save the date. We'll have those dates coming out soon. And then the importance of staffing and employee retention on value creation. What role does employee turnover, what role does that play in your evaluation, and how can you solve for those challenges? A special guest there as well. And then we'll look at the drivers of value for your IT firms in 2025 and beyond. So excited about the lineup we have coming up. Stay tuned for more information and the dates here in the coming days. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, IT Valuations is a business transformation firm who happens to do valuations, buy side, sell side, tax advising, mergers as well. So that's what we're all about. You can always check out our website and explore the different things that we offer. Happy to engage with you in anything you may have questions around these solutions. All right, I think I've flown through all the housekeeping items. Excited today to have a conversation with Greg Northrup and Randy Crocket. Randy, I'd love for you to start with just introducing yourself and what you guys are up to there at SnapTech.
Yeah. So, Randy Crocket, as you mentioned, SnapTech IT. We are a security first managed service company. We have offices in Atlanta, Georgia, Phoenix, Arizona, San Francisco Bay Area. Came across. We've grown kind of over the years through mergers and acquisitions to kind of get where we are today. Um, Personally, I grew up, born and raised in Sacramento, California, a lifelong entrepreneur. Started my first computer company in high school back in 19 back in the 90s. I won't get too specific. I don't want to age myself too much. Um, but just since then, got involved in lots of different IT related fields and industries, and really, kind of kicked off SnapTech IT at around 2007, 2006, merging with my business partner Carl Bickmore around 2008, where we were like, hey, let's really do this. Learn about this managed services thing. Started building managed service company. Joined Evolve. Joined, I guess it was HTG back then. Been involved with them many years. Got involved with ConnectWise. Been involved in their different organizations, different peer groups over the years. Merging with Snap Technology in 2016. Bringing our third partner, Sean Brown. Many of you probably know Sean and Carl. They're in lots of different events and industries, events as well. Growing it to kind of where we're at today, like I mentioned. So
Yeah, thank you, Randy.
yeah,
Greg, I was thinking about your introduction, and you kind of wear multiple hats in the IT Valuations family. So maybe the slide should say managing partner of IT Tax Advisors, which is a firm we launched in Q2 of last year. Maybe introduce yourself, provide some personal background, and then maybe why the launch of IT Tax Advisors.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, Greg Northrup joined iTValuations back in September 2023, thinking I was done with taxes for my career because I'd worked nearly a decade in public accounting, working with high net worth individuals, family businesses, private equity groups, and a lot of transactions between those family-owned companies and PE, and then also family-owned companies within other families. And kind of brought that specialty to ITV to really look at transactions through a tax lens and doing tax due diligence, do valuations, but not touch a tax return ever again. And then, fast forward a handful of months later during my time here, and the need was just so great when talking to, IT service companies in the space after reviewing some returns, sitting on some transaction calls, there was just such a need for a CPA like tax service offering of really looking prospectively versus retrospectively, looking at the past year and really trying to get ahead of, okay, well, if you're going to sell or transact in the future, what are some things you can be doing today to prepare yourself for that, and minimizing the taxes all along the way? But you can change your philosophy from tax optimization to more like profit and value maximization while keeping in mind the tax implications of doing that. And so that's why we launched IT Tax Advisors, to really be a unique service offering that takes our expertise in valuations and M&A into the tax landscape, specifically for IT service companies. So we're really not out there advertising to any other marketplace. We're really just trying to marry together what we're already doing in the valuations and M&A space, but then layer in that tax component, which is just so needed from what we've gathered and seen in the marketplace.
That's good, Randy. You've been a CFO for a number of years. You've obviously interacted quite a bit with CPAs. And spoiler alert, Randy Crocket uses IT Tax Advisors, right? That's why he's on the
yeah.
webinar. So talk about maybe the switch and why you made the switch, and what you were hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, so we started like most entrepreneurs or most IT business company owners as, technicians, and started at really nothing, started building a business, and got a little more sophisticated, realized we needed some tax advice as we kind of got a couple $1 billion. And we started with a CPA. He was great. Really liked the guy a lot, good friend, used him for many years, but really, he was reactive, right? We'd ask him, how do we do this? And he would tell us. And as we were doing acquisitions, we've done several over the years. And as we've kind of grown through acquisitions and realizing that everyone's going to exit their business one day, I started learning more about exit strategies. And I got involved in, getting CPA certified and just really understanding the life cycle of a business. And I quickly realized, as good as our CPA is, it's not strategic in any real form or fashion. He just kind of answers the questions that I have and says, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Help me understand what my options are. As we were kind of exploring, this growth and looking at different options, we came across, you guys. Started working with Greg, and my eyes were really open to a new way of seeing CPA services and financial advice, not really from a wealth management, but really from your business perspective and how do you maximize the value, which is what we all want to do, and how do we take potential of some of the nuances and I guess opportunities in the tax code to really build a solid foundation for the business that we have now and for an eventual exit strategy, right? Because you can never plan too early for that. We're all going to exit at some point. Hopefully we're prepared and planned for that.
Mhm.
I joke with Greg that all CPAs are probably the same. My CPA is TurboTax. Been working with them for a number of years. Never had a problem. But the reality is they're not all the same. They're all different. And Greg, you talked a little bit about kind of the gap you were trying to fill in the IT industry with IT tax advisors. I'm curious, as we brought on clients now, what are some trends you're seeing in the work you're doing, and where do you think the value add is for an accountant? And also, I mean, this was kind of referenced, I think, in a post that Reed actually made last week. The percentage of CPAs retiring or moving on in the next, I think, 5 years, it's I can't remember if it's like 70%. Is that right, Greg?
75%. Yeah.
75%. So whether you might like your CPA, but he or she might be moving on fairly soon too. And that's the reality too of the industry right now, right?
Yeah, I mean,
that's actually what happened to mine.
Yeah, right. And that's the value proposition that we were seeing when we were thinking about starting IT Tax Advisors is, I saw a stat from, kind of all the CPA societies pooling their data together at the end of 2023, because this was the beginning of 2024 when we saw this. Their data was showing 1.6 million CPAs nationwide, and approximately 75% of them were set to either retire or arguably potentially die in the next 5 years, because the average age of a CPA was 65 years old, and it still is to this day. Actually, it's probably even gone up because there's just fewer and fewer CPA, like people out of college getting into the profession. And then even the pipeline for how they get to this stage in their career, it's very much a chew them and spit them out philosophy in public accounting, that you're not really building up talent to actually be good advisors. You're building up talent to be good doers of Excel and, processing tax returns. And so what we've noticed is, I mean, from a very low bar standard, we've had some clients come to us and say, my CPA is just not responding to me. Like, I reach out and I haven't heard back from them if they want to do my return this year. I've asked them questions and just never got a response. And so it's like, that's like the lowest of low bars for us to just basically hopefully step over very easily and just, be someone who can actually respond to. But even more than that, we've just noticed a lot of CPAs are inherently, backward looking versus forward looking. When I was in school, in my accounting classes, we always joke that CFOs are forward thinkers and CPAs are backward thinkers, or, like public accountants. But I really think the best public accountants, the best CPAs are ones that do both. They look both forward and backward and actually take into account the whole comprehensive picture, because you can change and influence backward by looking forward. And so I'd like to tell clients, I can't change the tax law, but I can change your fact pattern. So if you come to me with your situation ahead of time, let's change the fact pattern around so that it results in a better tax answer for you as we move forward. Because then retroactively, when I look backwards, we're going to have a much better picture in our rearview mirror as we prepare for that transaction or prepare for whatever that life event is that you have in the foreseeable future.
That's so good. For those of you who may have joined us late, you might wonder why there's random states in the chat as well as a random plane name. So the trivia question for a chance to win $25: in what state did Randy run out of fuel while flying a plane? And secondly, if you know what plane he was flying, another $25. Randy, question to you.
Yeah.
You made the switch. Maybe the biggest surprise that you found after switching to using IT tax advisors.
I'd say there were a couple. I'd say the one that stands out the most is as Greg and team were going through our taxes to kind of get a good feel of what's happened, so we can position us going forward, was that our 2022 taxes were actually done incorrectly. It was a complicated year for us. We had an investment in a foreign company had to file foreign tax credits, foreign tax returns, and it was actually done incorrectly. So we're in the process of amending our 2022 tax return to make sure we get that taken care of and cleared up. But that was quite the surprise, to the tune of, a couple $1,000s just in, unpaid taxes, and then, penalties on top of that, right? I'd say that's probably the biggest one.
Greg, talk about, it's not uncommon, I think my guess is for mistakes to be made, and no one's perfect, but talk about the ramification of a mistake like that was captured. What's the business realizing in form of risk because of something like that?
Totally. Most of the, quote unquote errors that we would find in tax returns, for the most part, are cosmetic. And so we're not trying to pick apart other CPAs and say they're doing this incorrectly or whatnot, but there are certain things you want to make sure that you get done correctly. And anything when you're dealing with international or going across borders in different states, you want to make sure that you have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, because it is a nasty process of getting audited by a state that you haven't been doing business in properly, and making sure that you're filing in all the correct states. It's also a nasty process if you don't file the right foreign forms, if you have any foreign income or foreign tax credits. In the case of, Randy and Snaptech, the lack of filing the appropriate forms could have amounted to a $10,000 penalty per form that was missed, which there was a form required for each partner. So that penalty can compound on itself, where all of a sudden that's a really big liability to receive. I mean, I was a part of an engagement at my old firm BDO. I didn't work on the account, but I saw from afar where they got hit with a penalty for missing a form just one time, one form, and it seemed like it was a small oversight, but the IRS was really firm on, no, on this foreign stuff, we're taking this seriously, and they were not going to budge on, granting abatement on it. And so I've seen that play out much firmer, in a much firmer way on some of those different things, that you want to just make sure that you have the right person in place, because not all CPAs are equipped to deal with all sorts of things that come across their desk. There's a lot of CPAs kind of find their lane and they stick to that lane, which is great. But they maybe haven't had exposure to foreign. They haven't had exposure to multi-state, or whatever the issue is. They haven't had exposure to rollover equity or a big transaction. And so you want to make sure that you have a CPA or an advisor who's done these things and can actually properly advise you, so that you're not being surprised because your CPA is finally looking into it and learning about it for the first time when it comes up and you haven't been able to plan for it appropriately.
It's good. Greg, if there was maybe, let's say someone's like, what, I'm not sure my accountant is on top of stuff. Is there a common mistake you see that, hey, you can check on this thing today and maybe save yourself a little bit of a headache, or is it not that simple?
I mean, there's a couple ones that we've noticed right out of the gate. One simple one is every, MSP owner should qualify for the Section 199A qualified small business deduction or QBI. There's an argument out there that some CPAs take and say that managed service providers are a service business or a specified service trader business, which doesn't actually allow for the full deduction depending on your income. But when you read the law, MSPs actually don't fall into one of the two criteria listed for an SSTB. So they actually do qualify for the full 20% reduction in income on their personal tax return. So that's probably one of the most common. The second one most common that I see is just state filings. Most companies just file in their resident state wherever they're located, and that's it, which is fine. It's a very conservative mindset initially, but it can actually be a very aggressive stance down the road if all of a sudden you do have employees and clients in other states, especially some of the more aggressive states, that if any of those things get detected during a Q of E or tax due diligence process as part of a transaction. One of the first transactions I came into when I joined ITV was there was $1 million escrow put in place on the sale of a company because of a tax issue with the state of Illinois that was discovered during the tax due diligence process. And so had they actually had their ducks in a row from a tax standpoint, they would have actually gotten to take that $1 million at close. And there was only $1.6 million coming to them at close anyway. So they lost over 50% of the cash proceeds that they were going to get at close to escrow because of an error that they had made over the years, and they never got rectified.
Yeah. That's scary to think about. let's pivot to something a little more fun to talk about. Randy, talk about SnapTech's goals and maybe how Greg and his team at IT Tax Advisors are helping you think through your acquisition strategy.
Yeah. Kind of talking back at the beginning, we've grown substantially over the years. We're about to just a little under 10 million top line, I believe this coming year is what we're shooting for, or just over 10 million, I guess we're shooting for this year. Um, with that, we have a pretty aggressive growth strategy through sales and marketing, but also through acquisitions. It's been a kind of staple for us in the past, and looking to really dig back into that. I think we think the market's pretty ripe for that. But we're not private equity backed. We're self-funded, and with that, we're using Greg and team to help us really build out the strategy on how to do that. How do we get the funding, right? How do we build the funding package through the banks, things of that nature? How do we share equity with those that we're acquiring and make it a good win-win for everybody? And how do we build that out? And um, really, him and his team has been critical to really helping us think through that, build out the plan, build out the strategy, and put it in place so that we can create win-wins for everybody as we grow through acquisitions.
Mhm.
Greg, maybe talk about how you help buyers. It seems like, I run the buy side projects here at ITV, and we typically any given time have, 4 to 5 going at a time. Double that right now as we head into the end of Q1, early Q2. It seems like a lot of firms are looking to be acquirers here in the early parts of 2025. How do you advise buyers in the point of acquisition? What kind of things are you giving advice around? And then maybe on the flip side, how are you advising sellers?
Yeah, so for buyers, I mean, given the significant influence of private equity in the space, what a lot of advising we're doing is just trying to level the playing field and allow for buyers to have the full arsenal of compensation consideration options at their disposal. So when you're an S corp, you really don't have a rollover equity, or at least you probably shouldn't, offer a rollover equity type of offering to a prospective company you're looking to buy. And so it makes a lot of sense to potentially change your structure and look at either a partnership or a C Corp model where now all of a sudden when you offer them rollover equity, you're offering them rollover equity potentially on just the go forward value versus the historical value that's been, created. So that's one major one we've done. We've also done with certain buyers, maybe they want to do more fundraising type of initiatives. They want to try and get more capital in the door. So they don't want to sell out of the entire position. Maybe they don't want to sell out in any of the position, at least initially. They want to try and get some money in now for maybe a deferred position. So again, if they're already structured in the right entity type, there's what's called a safe agreement available to getting certain investors in the door on a future percentage of equity value, but for a cash dollar amount today. And it allows you to then take those dollars and reinvest them into the company, either via acquisitions or, continuous improvement. And so those are just a couple of different ways when we're thinking about scaling and growing your company that you need to be like cognizant of and considering, and then understanding what is the tax implications of doing so. You don't want to all of a sudden offer rollover equity in your S corp to someone and then come to your CPA later and be like, here's what I did, and then figure out, oh, I just carved out 15% of what I've built over the last 25 years to this person that I just bought.
That's good. Randy, thoughts on as you've gone through the acquisition process and received advice, like what are some takeaways you've had, working with Greg and the team?
I think the key is accurate, clean financials, right? That goes a long way in building buyer confidence, in making the deal go faster and smoother, and really maximizing your value to be acquired. As an acquirer, is that right? You would Having clean financials allows you to put a clean financial package together for funding options, or either through traditional debt financing or through that's some of the ways that Greg's talked about sharing, future equities, things of that nature. The key to do all of that is, one, having a plan, two, having clean financials, and having accurate financials so you can easily understand, having things in the right buckets, having things, cogs are into cogs, things that aren't cogs aren't into cogs. It really builds a lot of confidence knowing, looking at clean financials to understand that, yeah, this business is well run. It'll go a long way for both the banks and for your potential sell if you're looking to sell.
Greg, what maybe some low-hanging fruit on how to what are some things people can do right now without really any help or hiring you to clean up some financials? And before you answer that question, I just peeked at the chat. Have not seen the winning state yet. So now's your
Keep
time
guessing.
to
I
put
gave you
a
some
couple
hints
because
in the
we've this is
beginning.
the last this is the last question. So had not seen the right state get in. So Greg, give us some free advice on maybe how to present some clean financials to give someone some work to do on a good takeaway from the webinar. Then we'll share the winner of the gift cards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, some CPAs that do tax returns may just take your numbers and put them into a tax return because that's what you're paying them to do. But again, given our expertise and just working in this field, like if we see something in your financial statements, whether it's from a structure standpoint, from a chart of account standpoint, we're going to provide you that feedback because we want to try and position you into that space of maximizing value into a potential transaction down the road. And so that's kind of the value add of like, all right, what can we find that is low hanging fruit? One of the easy ones is, all right, do you have, direct labor and cost of goods sold? That's a really easy one. Do you understand your fully loaded cost? And do you need to move things around in your cost of goods sold to understand what is your fully loaded cost of your employees and of, the ability to deliver on your different revenue streams relative to your revenue? So then you can better assess your gross margin. When, kind of flipping over to my other hat, my valuation hat, when we value companies and I give a, bad or lower valuation relative to what the company was expecting, 99% of the time it's due to low gross margins because gross margin really drives EBITDA, not the other way around. And so when you're looking at, even from a tax perspective, a lot of tax CPAs are not focused on whether you have stuff in COGS or you have it below the line. It doesn't really matter. The problem is the function of where you put your numbers actually matters from a business making and decision making standpoint. Being able to understand what is rolling up to what is my profitability? Where can I where do I have some sore points? All right, look at your customer list and see, is there any customers that need to be right sized from a pricing standpoint? What services are you offering to this client that you're not to this one that now you could cross sell and upsell? Because your greatest way to growth is by selling more services to your existing customers. So those are just a handful of things that like we recommend on the valuation side, and things that like even from a tax perspective, we're looking at your business through that lens to be able to provide that type of feedback and clarity, because we want to understand your business more than just understanding your tax return.
That's great. Brandy, Greg, thanks. Great information. Just a couple quick points as we wrap up. If you're interested in having a conversation with Greg and the team at IT Tax, you can scan the QR code. You can check out our website and request information there. But the idea is it's a fixed subscription model where we basically build the package around your business needs, and we want to help you hit your objectives. So again, a chance to scan that QR code there. If you're interested in getting a demo of our valuations as a service platform, which Randy and the team at SnapTech are on as well, happy to provide that for you as well. You can scan this QR code, again, get more information online. If you don't want to meet, but you want to get a recording of a demo that's for your specific use case, happy to do that as well. Just let us know. And last but not least, the reason you're still hanging around is because you want to know Randy's story about running out of gas while flying. We do have a winner. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's Gayla Hall, who guessed Arizona. I had to
Congratulations.
think, I saw AR and I thought, is that Arizona or is that Arkansas? I don't remember, but that's Arkansas, I think, right? So Gayla wins the gift card. And
Yep.
the plane was I went by too fast. The Beechcraft Debonair. 1966 was the year. Randy, I feel like we should get the story.
Yeah, well, the airplane's a 1966 airplane. Okay, so I was flying. I'm a general aviation pilot. It's one of my passions. I'm a collector of hobbies, and that's the one I continue to go back to. I love flying. It brings me great peace and joy. I run the Arizona Cloudbusters Flying Club for about 10 years. I just stopped about a year ago. And I was flying from California, Sacramento to Phoenix, back to my home. I've lived in Arizona as my primary residence for about the past 10 years. And we have tip tanks in that airplane, which just add additional weight capacity and obviously more fuel so you can go longer distances. Well, when you store the airplane, as you typically are flying around, you want to leave those tip tanks empty. You typically, want to leave them as low as possible. So I actually ran it out of fuel on purpose, but I forgot. I forgot I was doing it. So as the fuel is getting low in the tip tank, so I recognize it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll keep flying along, maybe 10 more minutes, and all of a sudden the engine stops on me, and boy, talk about a pucker moment. I was a bit nervous there for about 30 seconds until I realized, oh wait, I did this on purpose, and so switched tanks, bled out the other tank, landed safely, no crisis, fully averted. But boy, that was probably one of the scariest 30 seconds I've ever had in aviation.
Yeah, I'm scared for you. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, Randy, thanks so much for taking the time today. Greg, always great to have you on. Thanks for all of those of you who joined us online today. Looking forward to our next webinar in March around Q1 valuations. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.